Netflix just released the new teaser trailer for season 4 of The Witcher, and so far the reaction to it is not that good. As you can see on the official Netflix YouTube channel, the trailer is currently sitting at 15,000 likes to 26,000 dislikes. Not the worst ratio in the world, but it's still bad nonetheless, considering that the show is going to be coming out in about a month, and it seems like the audience is just not there for it. But before I really dive into all this, if you're new to the channel here, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and if you can, leave a comment and hit the like button too, because it helps me out. So scrolling further down in the comments, you can see the sentiment around this show is also overwhelmingly negative. This top comment right here, remember guys, don't blame Liam, blame the producers. And I do agree with that. A lot of people will be mad at Liam Hemsworth for replacing Henry Cavill, but he's just an actor hired to do a role. And in ordinary circumstances, I would say he actually looks right for the character, but because he's replacing Henry Cavill, there's going to be that animosity there. But as far as I've heard, he's never said anything attacking the fans. So I honestly feel kind of sorry for him, because it seems like he's kind of put in an impossible situation to try to salvage a show that really does seem like it's unsalvageable. The Switcher, yeah, there's that. Liam pulling heart out of Wraith, quite symbolic of what producers did to the show. I agree with that. The Witcher won't be the same without Henry Cavill as Geralt of Rivia. Yeah, so you can see the overwhelming sentiment surrounding the show is negative, and this is something that you've kind of seen happening for some time now. The show started off pretty strong with season 1, 88% score on Rotten Tomatoes for audiences, and note that it's a 68% score for critics. Now you fast forward to season 3 and things kind of shifted where audiences don't like it, but critics seem to like it a lot more. And I think that's a large reason as to why the show's ultimately failing. And that's because the people who are producing it were no longer interested in making something for the fans of The Witcher. They were interested in making something that pushes their own political agenda, which is coincidentally something that critics seem to like a lot more. But critics aren't the ones who pay the bills. You need the audience to be on board with it, and audiences have kind of abandoned this. And this isn't me being hyperbolic or speculating. We know from firsthand accounts that the people working on the show were actively mocking the source material and didn't like it. And then you have the author of the novels saying that, yeah, he would give his input on what they should be doing for the series, but they were just ignoring him because, like I said, they're not interested in being faithful to the source material. They're interested in using the source material so they can push their own political agenda, because the writers of the series are not talented enough to create something on their own. Because if they were talented like that, then they would have created their own fantasy series that pushes DEI like they're trying to do. But since they can't do that, the only thing that they can do effectively is basically just cannibalize some other person's work and actually hope that because it has some notoriety surrounding it, then they can use that to actually put a spotlight on their own work. But unfortunately for them, when people start getting wind of what they were doing and seeing the results of their work, they're just rejecting it. This article came out a couple years ago, basically dissecting what went wrong when it came to season 3 of The Witcher. And it's pretty much, I would say, no-brainer right here. So The Witcher's battle with the source material. The Witcher was always has always tried to follow Andrzej Sapkowski's books. Well, we know from the author himself that no, that's not the case. But the writers building the franchise haven't done a great job of it since season 1. That is to say, Sapkowski's novels and stories have remained the scaffolding upon which the Netflix series is built. No, what it is, it's the skin suit that they're trying to put on in order to push their own DEI agenda that people have gotten wind to, and they're not interested in this sort of thing. But those involved must be thirsty enough for profit, and they try to expand the lore themselves with disappointing miniseries like Blood Origin, and they end up offending their viewership. And this is something that we've seen from a lot of other studios in the past, and it seems kind of crazy to me because they have to spend a lot of money in order to get the rights to produce this series. Not only that, but they also have to spend a lot of money in order to actually produce it at like the production. So you spend money for the rights, then you spend money to make the show itself. So you're invested quite a bit in this. And the only reason studios will do that is because there is a large built-in fan base, not only for the novels, but also for the video games. So they're thinking like, okay, we can spend a lot of money to do this because there's an existing fan base for this. So if we spend this money, we should be able to have a return on our investment. But that's not what happens, because what they end up doing is like, okay, there's this big built-in audience to this thing that we spent a lot of money to get the rights for. Let's try to expand it out so we can try to bring in more people into the fold. And on the surface, that's not a bad idea, and I don't have a problem with that. Unfortunately, you see time and time again, studios do that at the cost of their existing fan base, especially if you have writers like we have for The Witcher that don't have a respect for the source material. What they end up doing is alienating their existing fan base in order to try to pursue an audience who was never interested in it to begin with, because if the people that they're trying to pander to with a lot of these changes were interested in a fantasy series like The Witcher, then they would have already been fans of The Witcher. But instead, you're willing to disregard the existing fan base that they have in order to try to pursue a fan base that honestly just doesn't exist. And then you have people like Henry Cavill who are working on the show, who is a fan not only of the video games but of the novels. And he's trying to be the voice of reason on the set and trying to steer things in the right direction. And while he might have had a bit of sway in first season of it, it became clear when it came to season 2 and season 3 that they're just disregarding everything that he has to say in order to try to pursue their own political agenda. And credit to Henry Cavill, he tried to do what he could do with the role as an actor, but there's only so much he can do, and he wanted to leave the project, so they got rid of him as a result. It really does signal to the audience that they would rather tell their own story as opposed to keep Henry Cavill on board because he's trying to go to bat for the source material. Of course, satiating fans' desire for a story-driven series that is truthful to the books may not be enough anymore. Twice now in Cavill's career, he has proved that he has the fans on his side, and that's because he's actually a fan of the things that he's worked on himself, not only The Witcher, but also Superman, and he wants to be true to that, and he's also cast perfectly in those roles. But the people producing it want to do their own thing, and Henry Cavill as a fan is just kind of in their way. There was quite an uproar when he announced that Liam Hemsworth would replace him as Geralt of Rivia. Fans were so disappointed that some even called for a boycott of season 4 as of now. Viewers will likely stick with the show for season 3, if only because Henry Cavill is on the screen. But the show's creators will have to do better than fixing the series' problems if it wants to keep viewers. And we did see that when season 3 finally did roll around, that there was people watching it saying that they're watching it because Henry Cavill is still in it, but they're going to abandon it afterwards. And I don't plan on the producers of it trying to fix a lot of the show's problems, because the problems were basically them not following the source material, and getting rid of Henry Cavill is basically them making a statement loud and clear that no, we're going to tell our own story. We don't want to have anyone working on this show who's going to question us or try to go to bat for the source material. We're going to use this to push our own agenda, and if anyone doesn't like that, we don't care how perfectly cast they are in the role, we're going to get rid of them and then just do our own thing. So that's why a lot of people don't like the fact that they got rid of Henry Cavill. If they were otherwise following the source material, but they just decided to get rid of Henry Cavill, or decided to leave to do other things, there would be a lot less pushback. But the reason why people are so mad about this decision particularly is because it just comes down to the people working on it don't respect the source material. They're not going to follow the lore, which is why people like The Witcher to begin with, and instead are just going to use it as a springboard in order to push their own agenda because the writers working on it aren't talented enough to create their own thing. And that's why I think The Witcher is ultimately going to fail, and why we're seeing this type of reaction to the new teaser that's going to, and the show I believe is supposed to come out next month. And if this is the reaction surrounding it right before its release, I'm not expecting a whole lot from it. Now, we do know the show is supposed to already have 5 seasons of it. It's possible that they might abandon the 5th season if the ratings on this are just truly abysmal, but maybe the loss of cutting the contract early, because there's going to be some penalties incurred for that if they do decide to cancel it after season 4. So maybe Netflix might decide like, okay, that's too much of a loss, as opposed to if we just, I don't know, reduce the budget of season 5 and continue on with this. Maybe that's better for them from a financial standpoint. But on the surface right now, I'm thinking this reaction that we got for season 3 of The Witcher, where you have 19% for audiences, I'm expecting that probably to be lower for season 4. But let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Were you a fan of The Witcher, and are you interested in season 4, or are you just completely done with this? Comment below. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you can, hit the like button too, and share the video out there, because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.